Any predictions for today's game? I know it's Stripling starting, maybe no hitter.
Yes, sir. There she goes.
Hello and welcome to a mini episode of Section 138. I think that's what we're going to call it here, which would be 139.5. I will be your host for this quick episode. I'm Bryson Poza. Mark was unable to join us, our usual host, but today it'll just be Jacob and I. All three of us will be back tomorrow to discuss the trade deadline acquisitions for the Blue Jays. The trade deadline is today in the afternoon, which is why we're going to wait until tomorrow to kind of focus our entire episode on that, just because we know that the Jays are not done. But for today, we'll be doing a quick series recap over the last 4 days in Boston. And of course, I'm joined alongside Jacob. And Jacob, you can feel the buzz in the city of Toronto. You can feel the buzz online, quite frankly, anywhere in Canada, along with any Blue Jays fan, no matter where you are. For the first time in 670 days, the Jays will be playing a baseball game in Canada, a game in Toronto, a game at Rogers Center. It's quite a day to be a Blue Jays fan.
Take this in. This is the third home opener of the season, and it's finally for real. Today, as you mentioned, it's July the 30th, and those couple weeks actually since the announcement just absolutely flew by. Blue Jays arrived at the Rogers Center at about 2 or 3 in the morning, and they, I guess, did not a tour of it, but they went around, looked at their locker rooms, and overall, it was a fantastic, fantastic thing to experience and to witness. I know the game hasn't even started, and I'm already ridiculously excited. And we were recording this at about 10:30 in the morning, so we still got a couple of hours. Well, pretty much half the day, but it's a fun thing. Blue Jays coming off of, I would say, a decent series against the Red Sox. Could have been a little bit better, but I would say it overall was a good series. And now they're going into a series with a bit of an underperforming team in the Kansas City Royals. They've got good pitchers lined up. I'm ridiculously excited. Now all we need is a dub in the first game home.
And yes, as you mentioned, the Blue Jays take a 4-game series against Boston recently. They split it over the last 4 days, which is why we're here to talk about it. The Jays split it. They lose game one, and of course Tuesday was rained out. They take so Wednesday they play a split doubleheader. The Jays take game one of that 4-1. They lose the second game 4-1. And yesterday was the bright spot, of course, to end, I think, what the Jays are calling it, a 162-day road trip or something like that, with a 13-1 win over the Red Sox. It was a very good way to end the, I guess, road trip. And, the bats were on fire. And of course, yesterday as well was the first of maybe a few more deals to go, with the Jays acquiring reliever Brad Hand from the Washington Nationals in exchange for catcher prospect Riley Adams. So that's one trade. The Jays aren't done yet, which is why we're still going to focus on this last 4 games in Boston. And just to start things off, Jacob, any takeaways from these last 4 games?
I think the main takeaway is the fact that the Blue Jays split the series. Now, I think they blew game one. I think they easily could have taken 3 or 4. I'm still considering this as a successful series because we're seeing that the Blue Jays can at least compete with the Red Sox. I mean, we're at the point in the season where competing with them and being in the games isn't really enough. You need to win. And they're still, I think, either 3.5 or 4.5 games back of the wild card. You got to win going into the last couple months of the season. You got to win. You got to put yourself in a position to make the playoffs. But considering that they were able to take 2 of 4, almost 3 of 4, I think that's a good sign going into a 10-game homestand against Royals. I think the Red Sox again or something. I'm not entirely sure, but considering that they were able to at least be on even playing fields, shows that this is a good team. And I mean, the offense, it was there for most of the game. I mean, you look at game one, 9 hits. They were spread out throughout the order. Game two, 8 hits. Game three, 5 hits, which, I mean, not too good. They did lose that game. And then 16 hits in the series finale. And I mean, we talk about the offense and how good it was. I mean, only 2 home runs in that third game. No, excuse me, the fourth game, which was Guerrero hitting that absolute monster right over the green monster, which is almost a tongue twister there. But offense, it was fantastic. You see RBIs coming through all throughout the order. Teoscar Hernandez with 3 RBIs. Reese McGuire had, I think, 3 doubles in that third game or in the last game of the series, which, I mean, he's been a fantastic offensive weapon for the Blue Jays, and maybe that uh, influenced their decision to kind of trade Riley Adams. We've seen the catching depth has been tested this season, and sort of now it's finally coming along. We see Danny Jansen on his second trip to the IL, not looking too good. He's probably going to be out a long time, maybe even the rest of the season, unfortunately. Reese McGuire came in and he's still hitting pretty well. After hitting under 100 last season, he's constantly being high twos in the threes, which if that's your number 9 hitter, I'm taking that any day, and that's fantastic. And even we talk about the offense, you look at the pitching, Hyunjin Ryu at his third straight start, that's been absolutely fantastic. 6 strong innings, no earned runs yesterday. The only earned run came off of Taylor Saucedo, but still the pitching it was great. And it shows that this team is clicking. I mean, it's been clicking, I think, all season long to some extent and in flashes, but this series I think was a very good series for the Blue Jays going into a 10-game homestand. I mean, we don't really even see that. Like we know that the Blue Jays are coming home, and I mean, that's still fantastic. But when you consider that they're home for 10 straight games, like that's all. Like normally you play, I think 81 home games. So that's almost an eighth of that, which that's a lot of motivation for them. Let's get those last couple wins. Let's go home, and then maybe let's start a run. I mean, the Royals kind of are out of it. The team that's on the field as of 7 p.m. tonight will pretty much be the team that plays and tries to get the Blue Jays into the playoffs because the deadline will have passed by then to trade guys. So this, I think this was the Blue Jays statement to say, hey, we're not done. We're going to go home. We're going to get those guys that we need, which we will see if that happens. We'll see what Ross Atkins and co can do, but it'll be a very fun thing to see. They're looking like they're trying to make a run for it. I mean, it's tough. I mean, I don't necessarily agree with rentals this time or this season, but if the Blue Jays are able to get a rental for a very low price, then I'll take it. And if it gets them into the playoffs, then so be it. Obviously, I think a lot of people would enjoy that. And hey, that's even more home games in Toronto. But in terms of this Red Sox series, I think it was good. The errors, I wouldn't say that the offense or the defense was very good. I mean, we saw Bo Bichette with quite a few misplays. I think there was 2 in the fourth game and a couple spread out throughout the first few games of the series. But and I mean, I think George Springer and Teoscar Hernandez misplayed a few balls. So that's going to have to get cleaned up. You can't be making those errors, especially against good teams. I mean, it didn't hurt them in the last game. I don't think any of the errors necessarily hurt the team, but they will hurt you and they will hurt you bad if you're making those errors against good teams in one-run games. So other than that, I think it was a very good series. And hey, all you need to do, take 2 of 3 or 3 of 3 from the Royals, have a 500 or greater road homestand, and this could very well be the turning point in the season for them.
It is. And I think that's why this homestand for, I guess, the original plan for them to come home was July 30th. And I think that's why it was important. Like you mentioned, it's a 10-game homestand. You have Kansas City for 3 games. And of course, you have the soon to be Cleveland Guardians for 4 games next week. This is the opportunity that the Jays need. We know this year they've been hovering above 500 the entire year. And right now, as of now, it won't be good enough to get in the playoffs. But, we're going to be post trade deadline today or tonight, like you mentioned. They have an opportunity to go on a run based off their schedule. They have a lot of easy opponents down the stretch as well, and they have to. I mean, look at the Yankees. Look at what they did yesterday. They added Joey Gallo and Anthony Rizzo in a span of 24 hours. The Boston Red Sox last night acquired Kyle Schwarber from the Washington Nationals, and the Nationals are another one who I guess have become a major seller. This is it. And if the Jays want to buy in a way, like you were mentioning, how to avoid rentals, but just in some shape or form to buy, this is what you have to do. You have to match it and you have to go on a run, because right now it won't be good enough. And of course, you have the Tampa Bay Rays who are still lingering at the top of the AL East. But yeah, it was a good series. Overall, I was hoping for a split. I think that was the worst case scenario that I would have taken away from it. Obviously, you would have wanted 3 out of 4 or even a sweep, but with the way the Red Sox have played this year, that seems highly unlikely. And going back to game 1, you have Thomas Hatch, who goes 3 1/3 or 3 2/3, sorry, and he doesn't have a very good season debut. He gives up 3 earned runs there, and it was kind of the same story that we've seen all year. In the 8th inning of that game, Trevor Richards comes out of the bullpen and allows 2 earned runs, and the Jays were up, and that's how Boston took that game. And that was definitely a frustrating game. And of course, the doubleheader, 4-1 win, which was game 1. It was another solid start from Robbie Ray, who makes or who makes another strong start. His ERA now is just above 3. It's at 3.04. Goes 6 strong innings, giving up 1 earned run, and of course the Jays score 4 runs. Not a lot, but it was enough, and that was led by Randall Grichuk, who had 3 RBIs. The second game of the doubleheader was kind of I guess the only game in the series where the Jays kind of went cold offensively. They only registered for 5 hits. They lose 4-1. And for Steven Matz, it was definitely wasn't a good start. He wasn't sharp at all. He only goes 3 1/3 and gives up 4 runs, or 4 earned runs on the spot there. And of course, we all mentioned yesterday, you were mentioning Vladimir Guerrero Jr.'s mammoth home run completely destroyed that. I was shocked when I saw that, and I'm glad. Obviously, everyone right away was wondering if it was fair or foul, but that was an amazing way to end, I guess, the series for the Jays. They register for 16 hits. I think you mentioned that as well. And Hyun-Jin Ryu seems to be getting back on track. Goes 6 innings, gives up only 2 hits, 0 earned runs, and that drops his ERA even more, which is a good sign. And from that, I mean, everyone pretty much contributed in that game. You don't really need to go over the depth chart for that. So, the Jays are currently at 51-48. And we were mentioning of the wild card standings. You don't really want to look at the division too much right now. It doesn't seem like it's possible. They're 9.5 games back, but currently they sit at 4.5 games back to that second wild card spot. And they have to leapfrog teams like the Yankees, the Mariners, Oakland, and of course Tampa Bay is currently in the first spot of the wild card series. The first wild card spot. It's going to be tough down the stretch, and there's no doubt about that. But I want to transition more to the trade deadline just a little bit, and kind of how the Jays are handling this. And I do agree with you, Jacob. I don't think they should be going all in for these rentals. I mean, if you want to talk about a rental, did you take a look at yesterday's trade with Max Scherzer going to the and Trey Turner going to the Los Angeles Dodgers for pretty much their entire farm system? That is a rental that's going all in. And from the Jay standpoint, I don't think they need to go all in. I mean, you have a cheap rental from Brad Hand, like you mentioned yesterday, or sorry, mentioned now, but what they did yesterday for catcher Riley Adams. You can go after guys with team control, and I think that's what the Jays are centering around. You have Jose Barrios, who the Jays are currently a strong suitor for, who has team control, and other names are obviously among targets that the Jays are still interested in. But that Brad Hand trade, I guess I just want to get into a little bit as well for catcher Riley Adams, and I was going to ask you in terms of what you thought of the deal, because obviously you're giving up a top or one of your top catching prospects in Riley Adams, but I think this move had no choice but to happen. I think it was inevitable that the Jays were going to move a catcher. You have a loaded depth chart, and even on the 40-man roster with catchers. And, you take a couple things away from it. Obviously, it clears the road for Gabriel Moreno, who's the top catching prospect as of now, to, I guess, finish the season in AAA Buffalo. I think that's the current plan. And you have Danny Jansen, who's injured again. You have Reese McGuire. You have Alejandro Kirk. This move doesn't hurt, and I don't think anyone's really losing sleep over it. I think that, just moving a catcher was something that was going to be done eventually. And pretty much, what other predictions do you have here before the trade deadline comes?
Well, first of all, with that Brad Hand deal, I love it. I mean, his numbers are not as good as they previously were. He has a 3.59 ERA in 41 games with Washington, whereas his career ERA, actually, it's a little bit higher than that. It's 3.65, but that's kind of bloated from a 17 ERA in 2012. So overall, the Blue Jays, they're getting a guy that's hovering around the twos, the low threes in the ERA, and he's a good closer. I think that there's absolutely no doubt in that. Blue Jays now have, I think, two very good options at the bottom end of their bullpen with Jordan Romano. It's a good move, and I mean when you have an influx of talent in one position, it makes sense to trade somebody in that position because I mean Riley Adams, I'm not looking too much into his numbers in the majors this season. They weren't very good. I didn't expect them to be very good. I don't even think that Riley Adams expected to be in the majors this season, just considering the circumstances on how it was, you know, Danny Jansen, Alejandro Kirk, and then maybe Reese McGuire as your third option. So I'm not really looking into that, and I think overall it was a good move. In terms of what the Blue Jays will do, I have absolutely no idea. I think I said this last week, or I said it to a friend a couple of days ago. I didn't think that they were going to make any moves. Honestly, I thought, or not any big moves. Maybe they'll make something, get another pitcher, maybe Jose Barrios, but I don't really think that there's much that the team can do unless you get guys with team control. And we saw that last season with Ross Stripling. This season, I think with Adam Simber. So it makes sense if you're going to do something like that. But if you're going to rent a guy, I don't think that this year's the year to do it because realistically, like I'm not saying that don't don't take your chances and try to make the playoffs, but realistically, if you're going to give up a any type of high leverage prospect for maybe a wild card berth, I don't really think it's worth it. I think at best you get team control. Maybe you make a move. I'm not saying you don't make a move and that wouldn't pay off, but you gotta have to think this is the first year that the Blue Jays can kind of contend for the playoffs. Get guys that can help you this season and next season because the last thing you want is something like Taiwan Walker or Brad Hand who might not even return after this season, where you give up not even you don't even give up a ton, but you get the services for only half a season or less than half a season. So that I think that's where I stand. It doesn't really make sense to rent guys right now. However, if the move is right and if you're able to get a guy with team control, I think a couple of months ago I looked at Austin Nola of the Phillies, who has I think 2 more years on his deal. I mean, there's really been no rumors about him in the Blue Jays, but if you're looking for something like that where you can get help for this season, but also next season and a couple seasons, then absolutely. It has to be in pitching though. I mean, unless like position player, I don't think they need much help. Yes, there's uncertainty with Marcus Semien coming back next season, but other than that, I think everything's pretty much set in stone. You got prospects that can come up, and there's really no reason to get an infielder. The the only thing I know that Corey Dickerson's also coming back, so maybe or expected to come back soon. So maybe you get an outfielder. I've heard some rumors and some names that are escaping me, but I've heard some names about outfielders. And the only way that I think that would make sense is if you trade Grichuk or Gurriel. Springer's obviously not going anywhere. Hernandez is not going anywhere. I know Gurriel has been heavily tied to a lot of other deals, especially in the offseason. I think that was one of the pieces in the Francisco Lindor trade or a potential trade. That is, I think, the best that they would do. I don't think position playing players are of need for them. I think they have enough. They have guys that are good, and they have guys for team control. I mean, you look at Bichette, Guerrero, Biggio, Hernandez is arbitration eligible, I think, within the next couple seasons, but he's still under team control. All of their position players, or most of them, are under control, and it doesn't make sense. Like if you were to acquire somebody, then you'd have to trade a position player. So it has to be pitching. I like the Brad Hand deal. I maybe the Blue Jays are done with their relief pitching. I'm not sure. Maybe they get another guy like a lower risk deal, maybe a Jason Grilly type deal like in 2016 where he's had a okay season, but then you bring him over and he has a much better season. That could definitely be an option for them. But I think the most likely candidate for them is probably Jose Barrios or some type of starting pitching, just because I mean that's probably the best bet. Like at some point you got to stop making bullpen moves. Like there's only so many you can make before you just have a completely different bullpen and at sometimes I don't even think that it is the bullpen that's the problem. Like yeah, it's blown a couple games. Well, I think it's actually like among the league leaders for blown games, but there are other aspects of the team. And I mean there's the starting pitching still uncertainty with I think that fifth spot. Maybe Steven Matz loses his position. I know Thomas Hatch kind of made a spot start, so you can do something like that. But that's I think that's probably the extent that the Blue Jays will go. Maybe a starter, but if they're going to make a run for the playoffs, I'll say it now. I think that the team is pretty much set in stone for what it is, and you'll see maybe a few more acquisitions, but I think that the team on the field, the team that will be on the field at the Rogers Center tonight is going to consist of primarily teams or players that were at Fenway Park yesterday.
Yeah, and Jose Barrios is somebody I really want. I think we go back to April when this first rumor came out, and he's got a year of team control. Like you mentioned, 2023 is when he's a free agent, so he's got 1 year of that. And yeah, I just think it comes down to the fact that, you know, I don't for a team that if they do want to get in, and it seems like they do to make that push for the wild card spot, someone like Steven Matz or Ross Stripling in that rotation, it just doesn't seem like it's going to be good enough. And someone like Jose Barrios definitely going to help the rotation if he does come, and it's going to cost a little bit more. But hey, I think he's currently is the top suitor now for starting pitches on the trade market after Max Scherzer was dealt yesterday. So we'll see what happens there. And my ideal scenario is that you trade for Barrios and you get one more reliever. I know Richard Rodriguez of the Pirates is still lurking around as well. All these guys have team control. And I don't know if you saw this too, Jay, quickly before we wrap things up, is that Apparently, the Jays are also interested in catcher Yan Gomes from the Washington Nationals, a Blue Jays legend from 2012. He appeared in, I think it was 43 games I'm looking at right now. That's a little strange. Something tells me that they don't like the way the recovery is going with Danny Jansen in terms of the time frame. Maybe that's got something to do with it, but time will tell. We will see what happens. That's why we will be back tomorrow, especially with Mark. All three of us will be back because we can talk about these moves. Will Jose Barrios be a Blue Jay the next time, or by the next time we record? Hey, can't rule it out. And of course, today, for the first time again in 670 days, or tonight, I should say, the Toronto Blue Jays return home. I'm going to be there. I'll be sending you guys a lot of pictures. I hope you guys are. I wish you guys were there with me, but hey, that's okay. I'm definitely excited. And any last comments here, Jacob?
Any predictions for today's game? I know it's Stripling starting, maybe no hitter. I'm just saying
No hitter.
it would
Wow.
be a very warm welcome.
See, I want to be on the same page as you, but we know that, like, for some reason, no matter what year or what month it is, the Jays always have a problem with their home opener. So
Yeah.
I don't know. But hey, I mean, a no hitter would be pretty cool to come back to. I'm just excited to see this lineup in person, the 2021 version of Vladimir Guerrero Jr., and everyone knows the rest. As always, you can find us on this episode will be on YouTube, and of course, it'll also be on our Instagram account. Episode 139 or 139.5, I think that's what we'll call it. And once again, all three of us will be back tomorrow for episode 140 of Section 138. So we will see you guys then, and we'll catch you next time.